I play character Brandon, and I think what was important, certainly from talking to sort of Steve at the beginning with the project, is that he's just he should appear as a sort of average guy, middle class, working in above average job. He gets paid well, has what seems to be a very functioning life, and an exciting life, and nothing really sort of, how can I say, sort of untoward seems to be sort of happening in his life until, as I say, we get introduced to his sister, character Sissy, and then you start to see that his routine starts to be upset and sort of knocked out of place, and therefore he starts to unravel. You have these characters, you've got Sissy and you've got Brandon, and both of them have come from a history that is never explained in the script, but we've always thought that there was something in their childhood that has happened, and both of their ways are very different in terms of dealing with that. She's a very explosive character, and he's essentially imploding. He is sort of, seeking these sort of sexual encounters and following through with them as a way to sort of numb away any sort of emotional content. I think it's something that's pretty relevant today, this idea of a sort of need for immediate sort of satisfaction or immediate sort of highs. And then, of course, what happens then directly after that is this feeling of a sort of ultimate shame and self-loathing. And then sort of, the cycle then starts to sort of perpetuate itself. You go through the shame element of it, and then to get rid of the shame, then you go out and tie one on again, or sort of, push it further still, and then you have to deal with double the shame when you sort of wake up the next morning. Steve really sort of sets the tone, so everybody is kind of terrified and excited at the same time, because it is kind of like letting go of the safety rail. It's like when you're a kid, you don't have the safety wheels on your bicycle, it's about sort of letting go and getting rid of the safety net and just, free fall. There is no place to hide in this whole script. I guess that's what's kind of really been the sort of toughest thing. There's no part where I can go, okay, I can take it easy here, because every sort of, he sort of squeezes every little sort of drop out of you. So it's quite sort of challenging and tiring, but ultimately and hopefully rewarding, She's done some phenomenal work here. She really sort of has got her finger right on the character. So yeah, it's been great.
But sex in some way sort of affects other people in a real sense, because you need the other person to sort of satisfy your addiction as such, other human being. So I was interested in that sort of story. It's interesting. Sometimes like sex is a bad word, so I have to sort of be very careful of how I do stuff as far as sex is concerned, and that's not the case. So it's a case of just shooting it in a way that it in most way would happen. Michael is a genius, really. He's a great actor, depending how great he wants to be, what roles he picks and who he works with. I mean, sky's the limit for him, really. When you have such a wonderful relationship with an actor, it's not much you have to do. So it gets very instinctual. So you get right to the core immediately. There's this kind of the journey that you don't have to take. It's much more to do with a nod, a wink, a gesture, and he knows, he understands, he fills the space. And I want to work with the best actor there is, and I think he is, basically. It's kind of interesting when an actress like her, where she's very much in vogue as such, or very much in demand, and we weren't thinking about her at all. And then she came for this, so it worked in the opposite direction for us. Rather than us chasing her, she came to us, and therefore it's kind of interesting that she chose this role. Because I imagine there are other roles that she could have done, but she wanted this one. So that was the light bulb that went off in my head, that she could commit, and therefore I could actually push her. The whole idea of pushing her was, for me, one of the most important things, because in a way that she could dare more and be brave, and she was.
I play Sissy, who's Brandon's sister, who is a singer and a sort of a nomad and a gypsy. I've always wanted to work with Michael. And so that, I mean, when the script came along and it was Steve and Michael, that was sort of such a dream job. I sat down with Steve in London back in October last year, and we were having coffee, and he kept on trying to leave, and after like every 10 minutes he was like, okay, I'm going to go now, and I was like, no, you haven't given me the job yet, you know. So I sort of basically forced him. For me, it's definitely the first time I've had to do nudity, singing, lots of stuff, very dark stuff, and he just creates the perfect environment for that, and it's such a treat. One of the biggest things for me in when I read the script was the nudity, because I'd never really done that before, and it's pretty full on, you know. But I just felt, having seen Steve's work, that was not, you know, it wasn't the sort of risk I'd be taking in any other kind of film. I was working with an artist, and I was working with someone who, you know, admires the human form, but it's not about, you know, it's not sexualizing it for no reason. It was definitely not gratuitous. And this is who she is, this character who can stand completely naked in front of her brother and not feel anything. His sensitivity is amazing, and how committed he is in every single take. And I come in like twice a week and do a scene. He's in every single frame, and he's so in every frame. You know, he's unbelievable to watch.
Well, you know, the easy, quick answer is, you know, it's a movie about sex addiction, but I think it's a lot more than that. I think I actually think it runs along the themes of family and guilt, and maybe shame is about shame. I think at the end of the day, it's a movie that a lot of people can connect to. Everyone's going to talk about that main storyline, the main theme of this film, and I guess sex is a good way to bring people into it, but it's a deeper story than that, and I think it's about baggage. It's about the things that we carry that we don't know how to deal with, and that come out in other ways, and it's about the relationships we have with people and the relationships with our own family, which can be the most strained. Working with Steve is kind of like stepping up to a cliff, and you can't see what's on the bottom of that cliff, and he says, all right, just go, just jump, and you don't know what's going to happen. And you know, the great part about it is that you're not the only one on that cliff. You're not the only one jumping. You know, Carrie's jumping, Michael's jumping, and Steve is jumping also by taking a chance with you. He's hired you to do a job. Michael's a man who I think brings a lot of depth to that. There's a lot going on there, and he's a consummate professional. You know, Carrie is she's a very talented, very present, very unique actress.
You know, it's funny. I feel like people initially reading sort of the blurb about it, people will think, oh, it's just about sex. You know, it's just about something dirty. But it's really about people's ability to cope and the mechanisms and devices that we have. Steve is all about, you know, being present, trying new things, breaking away from the script. And it keeps us all alive. It keeps us all in the space and questioning and frightened. But I don't think that there would be any other group that I would want to be taking this particular journey with. Michael is a sweetheart. He's a sweetheart. He's been so funny, and he knows how to cut into the tense and sort of strange moments where we were doing this love scene. And the love scene we actually shot before we did any dialogue. So it's like, hi, you know, how you doing? And voila, kind of thing. I think that there's something really special about this particular group of people and the way that Steve is working. It's frightening for an actor, for a performer, to show up and not have the usual blueprint for what this thing is going to be every time. Like every time it's ripped up. And that's what life is.
The company Seesaw, which I run with Emil Sherman, our view is that we take filmmakers that we really want to work with and we help them make the films that they want to make. And so as much as we found the story of the King's Speech and brought Tom Hooper on board because he had such an intimate understanding of an Australian-UK dynamic in terms of the story of that film, Steve wanted to make this film. He is a director who is interested in the dynamics of contemporary society, how the body works, how we use our bodies, and I think that Shame is as much as a story about, is as important to Steve as a filmmaker to tell this type of story as it is for Tom Hooper to tell something like The King's Speech. Steve's first film, which was Hunger, which he directed and went on to win the Camera d'Or at Cannes, was a film about a man who has no freedom, who uses his body to create the only freedom he can. And in a way, we're telling the opposite story in Shame. We're telling the story about a man who has every freedom, has everything that the Western society can provide, and yet he uses his body to sort of create his own prison. And so it felt very fitting that we would have Michael, who was the lead actor in Hunger, to play that role in Shame. Fundamentally, the film is about a man who is unable to control his sex life and how, when his younger sister comes into that life, how his normal experience and equilibrium is completely pushed out of sync, and how that affects the rest of his experience while she stays. What's interesting, when people hear the title and they hear the subject matter of the film, they think that the film is going to be deal with actual sex or sort of hardcore sex scenes. And I think what's more interesting is the way that Steve is handling those scenes and making it be about those two people and that dynamic and how that evolves through the film. And Steve talks very much about it being the elephant in the room. It's something that pretty much everyone does, but no one really talks about. And so we hope through this film that in a way we sort of force a debate of people being able to feel freer about talking about intimacy rather than sort of hiding it. In a way, I believe that American audiences will view the film and maybe look at it from what is this European perspective on contemporary America, and the British audience might be intrigued as to how this UK filmmaking has dealt with what is a very photographed and filmed city.
For me, it's a stellar cast. I've loved Michael for so long in so many films, and I think Kerry. I remember seeing her in Pride and Prejudice and thinking she was just exquisite, and she wasn't even in a main role then. And then, to have her, on the back of, Never Let Me Go and, an Education, and the kind of intensity of those performances, I knew that, the two of them would be very, very exciting, and so it was a kind of bit of a dream come true, really. I think what's going to be great is that Shame is such a different film to King's Speech, which is a beautiful, exquisite film, but Shame is something very, very different, and it's a very different beast. And I think it's probably a mark of how dynamic Iain is as a producer, that he's taken on such different material and been so confident and bold with it. When it came to sort of starting the research and meeting people who had dealt with, addiction of this kind, which is a sort of acting out or a compulsion to have a sort of sexual habit in the way that the character of Brandon does, we found that America was much more open to talking about it than Britain, and that inherently America recognised sex addiction as an addiction in a way that wasn't recognised in Britain. So I think it was obvious to us that in terms of research, New York was going to be quite fertile.
176, take 2.
Take 2.
Okay.
Set.
Hi, it's Lucy.
You are fantastic. You look beautiful in the dress, too. Please sit down. Sit down.
What do you think?
You too, baby.
Coming, thank you. Bye, guys.
Yes, we met this time the first time.
Andy, let's get that right back up here.
Rolling. Sounds good.
Like 178, take 1. Parker. Action.